Hello and welcome to my podcast. My name is Katie and today we'll be discussing the dark history of mental health care in the UK. So if this is a bit triggering for you, then feel free to click out of this podcast. Hopefully I will see you in another one. But otherwise, we shall begin. Mental asylums, also known as psychiatric hospitals, were institutions designed to house and treat people with mental illness. The history of mental asylums in the UK is a complex and often dark one. Today we will explore the brief history of mental asylums in the UK. The first asylums were built in the early 19th century. Prior to this, people with mental illness were often locked up in prisons or workhouses where they received little to no treatment or care. The asylums were supposed to provide a more humane environment for people with mental illness where they could receive treatment. The first mental asylum in the UK was the Bethlehem Royal Hospital, also known as Bedlam, which was established in London in 1247. So if you've ever heard the phrase, it's bedlam in there, i.e. it's crazy in there, that is where that phrase comes from, the Bethlehem Royal Hospital. It was originally a priory for the Order of the Star of Bethlehem, and it began to take in patients with mental illness in the 14th century. Priories back then, that's what they were for. They took in the sick of the community. They were the hospitals of their day. It wasn't until the 17th century, however, that it became a formal institution for the care of people with mental illness. But the reality was often far from humane. The asylums were overcrowded, understaffed, and lacked basic sanitation. Patients were treated poorly, with abuse and neglect being common. Many of the treatments used in the asylums were barbaric and harmful, including electroshock therapy, lobotomies, and forced confinement. Prisons still use forced confinement today, so solitary confinement can be used as a punishment in modern day prisons. Despite the many problems with mental asylums, they did provide some important contributions to the field of mental health. They have helped to establish the idea that mental illness was a medical condition that required treatment rather than being a moral failing or personal weakness. They also contributed to the development of psychiatric medications, which have helped to improve the lives of many people with mental illness. In the late 20th century, there was a movement to close mental asylums and replace them with community-based care. This was driven partly by the abuses that had taken place in the asylums, but also by the development of new medications and treatments that allowed people with mental health problems to live in the community. One of the most significant reforms came with the Mental Health Act of 1959, which introduced a new system of care for people with mental illness. This included the establishment of community health services, which aimed to provide care for people with mental illness in their own homes and communities. Today, there are very few mental asylums left in the UK, and most people with mental illness receive treatment and care in the community. The history of mental asylums in the UK is a complex and dark one. While they provided some important contributions to the field of mental health, they were also plagued by overcrowding, abuse, and neglect. The move towards mental illness community-based care has helped to improve the lives of many people, and society continues to work towards improving mental health care for all. In the UK, we have the NHS, which, for its faults and its very long waiting lists, it does provide a lot of help for those with mental health disorders. I'm not going to get into the argument of universal healthcare. Thank you for listening to today's podcast about the dark history of mental health care. Appreciate it. If you have, I don't know if liked is the right word, but if you have found this interesting or informative, I would appreciate you sharing, commenting, liking, subscribing, etc. on whichever platform you are choosing to listen to me on. And if you're interested, I will leave all the links below where you can find me on the internet. You will find my blog where I write about all sorts of different things. I also do a houseplant blog because I have a rather large collection of houseplants, and all my social media links are over there as well. I look forward to reading your comments below. Hopefully we can have an open, friendly and understanding discussion about mental health care. Otherwise, that is it, and I will speak to you in the next one.